Hey everyone, it's Justin. Today we're talking Han1 Green from a deck guide perspective. Looking at two big things in this video. One is sort of an onboarding of the deck. It's been around for a while, but there is an intimidation factor about this deck with the way that the mechanics work. So if you have never played Han1 Green, this is the video for you. And the other big angle here is what does set 6 bring to Han1 Green in terms of cards? I think Captain Typho is a fantastic add. I think he changes up the way you can play the deck and also the meta, right? The new decks that Han1 has to deal with. Anakin Data Vault's one that we see popping up. The pilot decks now have different tools. So, what do we look at as we're going into set 6 as Han1 Green? Check it out.
Luke, we're gonna have company!
Welcome everyone to the Han1 Green deck guide. As we head into set 6, I think it's important to see any shifts that Han needs to make to its deck using set 6 cards. We see Captain Typho right there, a very powerful unit from Secrets of Power, but also go over some of the foundational components of Han1 Green. If you're wondering, like, I'm going into set 6, I've never played Han before, it's going to rotate out. This video is the video to watch if you sort of need that tutorial. Yes, Han's been out for a long time, but there's still a lot of people out there who are like, I'm intimidated by it. I don't want to mess up. I don't want to sequence wrong. Like, how does it actually work? So this video is going to cover that, but it's also going to cover the new set 6 sequencing mechanics, cards, things to look out for, and how that all goes as we head into sector and PQs. So excited to share that with you. And at the end, I'm going to get a little bit into sideboarding and the creation of a set 6 Han1 Green sideboard guide, which we will have in our Discord. So let's go right to slide 1. I've got a little agenda for you going back to my teaching days. So looking at some of the broken things that Han can do, some of the sequences that you can do, and then what to do when you don't draw those broken hands is sort of the first part of our agenda here. Talking about that very complicated flip turn. In this video, we'll cover some of it. You can't cover all of it because a lot of it's matchup dependent. Looking at what we did as a tournament team, the K2D tournament team in terms of sideboarding in set 5, and then looking how that's going to shift with the new lists, the new meta, and the new sideboard plans for set 6. So let's jump right to it and talk about, in my opinion, the most broken hand in SWU currently. So if you look back in the past, you had things like the Boba flip turn with overwhelming barrage and all those things use 8 resources. Tech DJ with Han Yellow. But Han1 Green still has, in my opinion, the most broken sequence in Star Wars Unlimited. And here's how it works. Basically, you play any unit on turn 1. Could be R2-D2, could be L37, Obi-Wan. There's other units you don't see here. Millennium Falcon, Stolen Hauler. Even Tech can be played on turn 1 using Han's ability. So you've got all of your 2-cost cards and all of your 3-cost cards. Blue Leader's another one. You play them on turn 1, you have a unit out. You have resupply in your opening hand. So on turn 2, you have to destroy a resource with Han's ability if you played a 3-cost card, but that doesn't matter. If you played a 2-cost card, you're fine. You play the resupply, which ramps you to the next turn, which in conjunction with Han's ability allows you to play a 7-cost card on the 3rd turn of the game. That is completely broken. It also allows you to flip your leader earlier. So you've got a 4-6 attacking. You've got a Kelleran or an Emphas or U-Wing spamming a whole bunch of units all on this sequencing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of how to progress this on the next slide, but this is the hand. So when you're looking for your opening hands, that's really what you're looking for. You're almost never mulliganing a hand with resupply. The only instance, actually, you're never mulliganing a hand for resupply with resupply. If you see resupply, you're keeping it. Because even if you didn't have a turn 1 play with resupply, you could actually play the resupply on turn 1, and then you draw, hopefully, a unit to play in the second turn and still do your 7 on the next turn. So ideal hands are a turn 1 unit, a turn 2 resupply, and then a 7-cost card. So that's really what you're looking for. If you look on the screen, I did put R2-D2 here because he helps. He doesn't necessarily increase your odds of finding resupply in the sense of if you have an opening hand with R2 without resupply, it's actually better to mulligan for the resupply. But if you open into, say you mulligan for resupply, you don't find it, you got R2D2. Now you have a little bit higher percentage of getting that second that resupply on turn 2. So R2 also helps you like pitch maybe like if you have the resupply but you don't have a 7, you can play the R2, discard a random card, hope to hit your 7, play the resupply, and then you have it, and you're off to the races. So really, there is a lot of layering here, but I think the big takeaway is you want to look for hands with resupply. It is the most broken thing you can do in this deck. All right, so how do you actually play it correctly? So prior to going to the sector in Portland, which I did top 8, I got a lot of help from Alex Blandon, who's on the tournament testing team. He's been playing HOD a ton, and I was like, can you just like walk me through how to play resupply? I feel like I'm always messing up. Because I would practice, and I was like, well, do I play it? Do I like go unit resupply and then like flip my Han, but then not really get to use the resources that he offered up? And Alex is like, nope, you have to play it on turn 2 and sometimes on turn 1. We'll see. I'll talk a little bit about how that shifted, even probably wanting to play it a little bit more on turn 1 in set 6 meta. So if you, in the first 2 turns, you either want to, if you see this top row, we see a turn 1 resupply and then a turn 2 unit, and we see Captain Typho there. So that is how these things have shifted a little bit. So turn 1 resupply into Typho is actually really strong, especially in the mirror. That can actually hostage your opponent's Han flip, combined with Snap or whatever the blaster card is called. But basically, over the first 2 turns of the game, you want to cast a unit and a resupply. And now, with Typho being like such an impactful card, you might want to be inclined to play the resupply first and then the Typho. But for the majority of the set 5 meta, and I think a lot of hands now, you're going to play a turn 1 unit and then a turn 2 resupply. What you don't want to do, and this is very important, what you don't want to do is go turn 1 unit, turn 2 unit, and then just play the resupply on turn 3 to flip your Han, because even though that's quite good and it feels quite strong, it doesn't allow you to have the broken 7 cost card. So if you think about it by comparison, if you play a turn 1 unit and then a resupply and then a 7, you've got a Han flip, a 7, and your turn 1 unit. Okay? If you do it in terms of turn 1 unit, turn 2 unit, then resupply, you've got your turn 1 unit, your turn 2 unit, your Han, but then you have you basically traded your 7 for another unit earlier. So it basically what ends up happening is if you're able to play the 7 earlier, it's kind of obvious, but if you're able to play the 7 earlier, that's going to now cascade into the 4th turn and the 5th turn. Cards like Emphas Nest and Keller and that value that you can accrue by playing that incredibly high-costed card early on. So you want to take away from this slide, play resupply on turn 1, play resupply on turn 2. That's okay. Get a unit with them, and then get your 7. All right, well, you may be asking yourself, what happens when I don't have resupply, right? Like, I'm not always going to have it. Yeah, I can mulligan for it. And going back to just one more comment about the previous slide, it is really nice. This deck can mulligan incredibly effectively because your 3 cost cards can be played on turn 1. Your 2 cost cards obviously can be played on turn 1, so you're almost never missing a turn 1 play in this deck, so you can mulligan very aggressively. 4 resupply, 4 cards that you want to see in a specific matchup. All right, the non-resupply hands. So I think there's a couple things that you can do with Han that when you don't have the resupplies. One is just being very, very aggressive in space, and that can take sort of 2 different pathways. One is a ship on turn 1 and then a Chewbacca on turn 2. Chewbacca piloting is super, super good, although lots of main deck upgrade hate right now in the meta, and it really stinks when you play a turn 1 Falcon, a turn 1 Stolen Hauler, then you play Chewbacca, and they just kill it with like a Constable or a Sabling Fang Fighter or even a Confiscate main. Like, that's really, really tough. So you do have to sort of have that risk analysis as you're going through the game. But one of the things that I think is also really good is, and I actually prefer this, is the space-wide plan. So you play a turn 1 Hauler, a turn 2 Falcon. Now you've got 2 ships. They're going to feel the pressure. That's attacking for 7. And then in the way that sequencing and actions work, you might be able to attack with one of your ships the next turn, and then they're doing some things, you're doing some things, but you actually could then put your Chewbacca on your other ship after they maybe claim or something like that and actually get that damage in, sequence it in such a way that your upgrades sort of are less blowouts if they do answer them. So I think one of the ways that I like to play Han when I don't have the resupply is I like to go to space first. Hauler, Falcon, maybe some upgrades, maybe just sometimes a blue leader goes up there. That's okay too. We've got Falcon get out and push. And then as you're developing in space, one of the nice things you see on the right side of this screen, you've got 2 Sentinels, Obi-Wan, Captain Typho, and then Blue Leader, which ambushes a ground unit for 5. You can actually kind of keep their ground under control while you're advancing your space, and then ultimately your Han's going to flip, attack for 4, sometimes 6 with Hot Shot Blaster. So that's a really good clock as well. When you're going all this stuff in space and you're really pressing base damage, you've still got this Han that can flip early, go right to base if they don't have a Sentinel. So that's sort of the very basic non-resupply type things. Han's sort of in reserve, pressing that extra damage. You can put people in check pretty easily when you're being really aggressive in space. All right, so the flip turn, I've talked a lot about the turn 1 play, turn 2 resupply, or turn 1 resupply, turn 2 play, and then 7 cost card. But let's actually talk about what that looks like. And you'll see a whole bunch of cards on the screen right now that are not 7 drops. I want to get to that in a second. So let's assume that you have the resupply and you play, you don't have the Captain Typho, so you play a turn 1, let's say Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, you put a card down, Obi-Wan's out. He maybe attacks, does whatever he does. Turn 2, you play resupply. You go up to your extra resources. So now you're in the potential flip turns. You've got an Obi-Wan out, and you've got Han ready to roll. So you have 5 resources at this point. You're going to use Han's ability to put a card down. Oftentimes it's correct to actually put the card down first so you have the flip turn sort of at the ready. Sometimes you want to just attack with the Obi-Wan. It really just depends on what's going on there. So you have your unit. You've got your Han ability, but you put the card down, so now you're at 6 resources. Opponent's doing some things. They're very aware of what's going on, and they're saying, like, maybe they're thinking, I got to stop this Han flip. That's a pretty common line from them where they're saying, I need to stop the Han flip. That can happen a couple of different ways. They can play No Good to Me Dead. They can have killed your Obi-Wan prior, and maybe they're a villain control deck that has a card like Power of the Dark Side. So when you resupply, you're only going to have one other unit. So you have to worry about that as well. Maybe they've got something like Entrenched that they'll actually put on their own guy to kill your Han Solo, which wouldn't necessarily, would stop the Han. If they did that first action, it could stop the Han flip turn completely. Maybe they've got the Anakin unit in a 4-cost card that's able to attack your Han and kill it. So my point in saying all of these things is you flip your Han, and if you attack and you get your 7th resource, great. You've got your 7 drop. The Han might die. That's actually okay. Han dying on flip turn, if you get to 7, is not that big a deal because you can actually get to 7 the next turn as well. But you've now got your 7. This is the whole point of this video so far, is talking about how wonderful a 7 is early. Great. But what happens when they answer the Han and you're left with 6 resources? You've already put a card down, so you're kind of lighter on what you can do. Well, you want a backup plan. So that's what's on the slide right now. So it's backup plan time. Or it's, hey, make my Han actually a little bit less vulnerable plan. So there's a whole bunch of combinations that we can do here that that allow our flip turn, even if they're disrupting it, to still be really effective. So the first you see up the top is the Millennium Falcon that smuggles. That's a great plan if they stop your Han. You just play it from resource row for essentially free cards, and it costs 6, so it always works out with the resource cost. And the other smuggle cards are really good as well. So you can go Tech or L37, sort of you're putting cards down, so you're probably at a card disadvantage, but you can start smuggling things out. Another option is multiple 3-cost cards. They stop your Han, you go Falcon, Hauler, or Falcon and another Falcon, 2 copies of Falcon, like the get out and push, and then the other Falcon, Blue Leader and Falcon. You can kind of slide your cards around a little bit. Maybe you've got L37 and not Obi-Wan, right? L37's been out. You could blaster your L37 and hit for 4, play another 3-cost card. So there's a bunch of different angles there. Another thing that you can do too is play it a little bit more cautiously. Let's say that they have a unit out that's kind of ready to destroy your Han as soon as you flip it, right? So they maybe represent their own blaster or a surprise strike or just something that's going to answer your Han. Well, you play a Sentinel now. Sentinel costs either 4 or 3 with Obi or Typho. So you play your Sentinel, they maybe kill the Sentinel, you flip your Han, you attack, and you play another 3-cost card. That could be a blaster, that could be a tech, that could be a Falcon, and it doesn't have to be the 7. So the flip turn is very fluid, but I think the really interesting and powerful thing that you're doing is you're presenting this really broken thing that they have to answer. And sometimes they won't answer it and you'll just win. But sometimes they will be able to stop the 7 and you're still being able to push these really powerful things like 2 3-drops on the 3rd turn of the game is super, super good. So that's just something to think about as you develop your flip turn. All right. This was what we developed for, we worked on. You see Typho's looking at it. He's saying, wait a second, how do I fit in here? This is the set 5 sideboarding plan that we used in Portland. You can see the commentary here, and I actually will put this in our Discord as well as sort of an artifact of a forgotten meta. This is based upon, obviously, the list that we played, because we had Sparks in the sideboard. We didn't have Captain Typho in a set 6 card, but we had, pretty standard. We really like the Plo Koon. So you can think about sideboarding with this deck. One quick commentary about sideboarding, you can kind of see it there in the notes in blue, and that is sideboarding is not an exact science with Han1 Green. You have to sort of think about cards that you could take out. So that orange color that says like take out, right? That's kind of like possible takeouts, and then goes in as like possible cards that go in. Sometimes that's different, right? Sometimes you know a card isn't going to be good in a matchup, but basically it's you kind of have to sideboarding with Han's very fluid, because if you won game 1, let's say with like a Chewie on a Falcon, and you know your opponent has access to a lot of upgrade removal, they're probably going to bring in all of it, right? So maybe you board the Chewies out, but maybe you won with a fast 7. And you're thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe they're actually like forgetting this Chewie upgrade plan, and you can pivot to that and you leave the Chewies in. So it's somewhat fluid what you're doing with sideboarding, and I think that'll remain the case in set 6. So on Black Friday of this week, I'm going to work with the crew. I don't know why. I'm going to work with the crew, and we're going to develop a set 6 sideboard guide. So if you're interested in that, join the KTUD Discord at the Kashik tier or above, and you'll see that as an artifact. The set 6 sideboard guide is coming on Black Friday. So after Thanksgiving, you'll see the exact same document as this, but it'll be updated for set 6. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I know there'll probably be some comments that's like, oh boy, another Han1 video. Don't know what to tell you, but I do hope that you learned some stuff from this. I know in Portland, last thing I'll end on this, in Portland, I never played Han1 before. And I got help from my friends. I got help from Alex in terms of learning the deck. And I got help the morning of the tournament. I said to Bobby Sapphire, I said, hey, can we just like sit down and actually play? And I want to see how the resources work with like defeating them. I don't want to mess up in the tournament. He showed me his mechanics and how he used 2 sort of metallic icons to represent the extra resources that he was using and when he needed to defeat them. I used that mechanic all day in Portland. It was awesome. I never messed up the resourcing stuff. I felt super prepared because I got help, right? And I hope this video helps you all as well. See you, everybody.